Welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Tonight we have Mark Rebke, myself, Ryan Dixon, and we are just going to hop into it. We're going to try to make this one as quick as possible, but still kind of tell you what we want to tell you. So this is an after-action report on the gun run team match at DeWitt's shooting center, I guess, in Ellerbe, North Carolina. So I'm gonna let kind of Mark take it over and kind of interview me ish in there, and we'll kind of go from there.
All right. So start out with, like we always like to start out, let's hear the match flavor. What was it? Was it, mostly running, mostly gunning? Was there anything special? Tell us about what the flavor of the match was.
Yep. So this is, I think this is the second year he's done this. It's the team land navigation match. So you start with you teammates, so two people. You start with your guns, all your gear, and then they give you points. So you've got your map. You either bring it or they give you one. Your compass, protractor, all your map tools, and they give you a couple points. And, in this way, they start off with 1 point. You go find that point, and then that point tells you what to do next, and you continue through the match that way. Through this, so it's not just land nav, obviously. Through this, as you're between points in different areas, you're hitting shooting stages. So there were 5 points we had to hit that you tried to hit, and 8 shooting stages. So there was a good deal of shooting. The stages were on the shorter side, maybe for run and gun, but they were really, really good. And I mean, anytime you get 8 shooting stages, it's a good time.
What was the distance on this one? 5 or 10?
I think if you went point to point, it was closer to 10K. Or yeah, around 10K. If you were to just go straight point to point, obviously, this part of North Carolina was fairly flat. There wasn't a lot of hills or anything like that, but it was right. They're like the shooting range is there, and then there's I don't think it's a national forest. It's like game lands or something like that like is on the other side of the road from it. And then there's some of the owners' fields and land for like their farm. So you had pretty dense brush that if you were to try to just like dead reckon point to point, you'd have some pretty tough times just getting through the terrain.
What was the most lost you got, or what was the most lost you could get? Could you get way out in the rhubarb?
We did not. One team, I guess, going to the first checkpoint got like a mile or two past. And we'll kind of go through some of this and I'll explain. I mean, I didn't think it was that hard. Your level of experience with a map and compass, definitely scale on maps. If you don't do it a lot, it's really easy to really get lost that way. So I'm not saying that as like, wow, they got, they really had no clue what they were doing, but you could misread something and definitely get way further out than you expected. I mean, we found every checkpoint but one. So I'll say that now. The one that we didn't find, I don't think we were lost. We were probably looking at the maps afterwards. We were pretty close, like GPS, but it was in dense stuff, and we just didn't do our due diligence there. So never real lost, though. But there's a couple times we backtrack and go back to where we started and have to go back down a little and find, some other terrain or something like that to do, because neither me or my partner had a ton of land nav experience. He had read up on land nav basically leading up to it. That was his experience reading on the internet. And then I've done a little bit at some other matches, following other people, and a little practice on my own, but definitely not an expert.
So to wrap up match flavor, weight the 3 components: the run and gun, the run, the navigation, and the shooting. How would you balance that out on a scale of 100? 30% navigation.
Yeah.
How would you put it?
Yeah, I would say like as far as if you want to do well at this match, 50% is always shooting. You've got to shoot well. There's a lot of really good shooters there. I would say 40% or 30% of the left of that is land navigation, and then 30, 35, and then like 15, 20 would be your running. If you had really good land nav to where you could just go point to point, you really didn't have to run. If you were, there were some roads, there were some trails, things that you could take a long way to get somewhere but maybe do it a little more safely. If you would have hustled those real quick and done some more running or fast movement, you could maybe catch up to a better land navigator as long as you still were decent with your skills. So I don't know that like the fastest team I think ran as well, because their time was pretty crazy. I mean, it was significantly faster, and they were one of the better shooting teams. So they were really squared away. But if you land naved well, you didn't necessarily have to like sprint. I mean, a lot of land nav you can't run because you're doing pace count, or you're trying to look at a map or something like that. So running was of the least significant out of all those.
Okay. So if you break down the match format, then how was the points and scoring done?
Like most, 50% shooting, 50% run time. In this case, that run time is during the land navigation. I believe a missed checkpoint, like missed land nav point, was a 1 hour penalty. So I think it was an hour. So
pretty steep. You couldn't
pretty
afford to
steep.
miss it.
So yeah, exactly. You couldn't just be like, well, we're going to skip all the land nav and shoot real well and win this. Like it's laid out well. Ellis makes a really fun, fair match. So you had to be good at all of those skills to place well.
Okay, so let's talk more about the skills. So land nav, you've already talked compass and map, no GPS, right? Would you say
no GPS.
They gave you points, they gave you coordinates? What did they give you to make your decisions on?
Yeah, they would give you UTM points. Okay. So they would say, 32, yada, 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 and 73, yada, yada, yada. And you had to take your map protractor, your map. It's not protractor. What do they call that? It's but yeah, you had your map there, and
your
you had
overlay.
To go, and your overlay. Yeah, there's another name for that. I wish I brought that down with me, but yeah, you would have to then find and mark that point. And for people who haven't done land nav, so the map they gave us was 1 in 50,000. I actually had, so you were encouraged if you wanted to bring a map. I had a map that my friend Nick Hansen had made from the year before, which was 1 in 25,000, which if you don't know much about map scales, 1 in 25,000 is a finer map, if you will. So all the terrain features are bigger. So you, per inch of map or whatever, you've got a lot less area on it. Whereas 1 in 50,000, you have a lot more map in that one area. So the reason I say this is when you're plotting points, the finest pencil you have, when you make a mark on that, or your finest pen, that mark is actually like 20, could be 20 yards, 50 yards. I mean, when you're talking the scale, you're trying to get super, super precise with these points to find them. And your map scale kind of affects that. So we actually started with the 1 in 50, and then I quickly pulled out the 1 in 25, and we just use that because that's what I've practiced with, and I'm a lot more comfortable. And that mark then is a little bit smaller of a point to find.
Okay. So that kind of land navigation, that's a skill that you could work on. That's something you could practice and build on.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to just, I mean, I've practiced at home recently, just marking points and then, writing them out. And then here, when I get a chance, I'm actually going to go out there and try to find that point, like basically use terrain features and pace count and that sort of thing, and go to where I think that point is. And then once I've gone to that point, you can get UTM to latitude, longitude, like apps for your phone, because a lot of GPS is latitude, longitude, which is not as useful for land navigation for just the way that they're broken down. So you can go to that, and I've done this before for practice. Mark points, go to a park or whatever, using my skills to try to find that point. And then when I get there, I pull my phone out and I look at it, and see how close I got. It's really hard to get like down to the square meter, but if I get within 20 meters or something like that, that's, if you were looking for something, you would probably find it, So that's a good way to practice. I need to do more of that, but that's what I've done in the past.
Okay, how about the running? So hilly, flat, bushwhacking, trail, muddy, anything?
Fairly flat, little bushwacky at times. The Checkpoint Charlie. Checkpoint Charlie was very dense woods. It was very close, but I think if you dead reckoned, it was 150 meters or something like that. But very dense brush. If you didn't really go directly to it, it wasn't like you were going to be able to look through the woods and see the checkpoint. What they did is they would find a tree. I think every one of them was on a tree, and they had orange or pink or something like that pieces of paper saran wrapped. So 3 sides would have orange saran wrapped around, and then the 4th side would have your directions on it. So either tell you where to go, like go back to check or go back to the rally point, go back to the start, or other latitude, longitude locations or UTM locations to take you, where you're supposed to go. So they'd have instructions on that 4th side. But if you got close to the place, they were easy to find. They weren't like hiding them under bushes or trees or, it wasn't, they were loud and proud. You had to get within a decent, decent area of it. Some of them you could see from 50 yards, like one of the first checkpoint was kind of on the slope of a hill. So if you got in that general area, even 50 yards away, you could probably see it. But a couple others, you kind of had to be, 15, 20 meters from it, something like that.
Okay. So that covers the run and navigation side. How about the shooting side? Long range, fast pistol, what kind of stuff did you see there?
Yep. Ellis, this is the second Ellis match I've done. He's the gentleman who runs most of the gun run, MD for most of the gun run matches. From my perspective, what I've seen with these two, he is I think they're very well-rounded shooting skills. One stage was breaching a door. Let me get in this. We'll just kind of hit around, but stage 5. If you found checkpoint D, I think you get a shotgun shell. So you could ballistically breach the door, kick it in. Your partner came in with his rifle and blasted a bunch of targets. And then you came in with pistol, blasted a bunch more. I mean, I think the fastest run on that was like 10 seconds. Most were in the 15, 20, 30, very, very fast burner stage. You had stage 5 and 6. 5 had out to like 200 yards with some smaller targets. 6 was maybe that far, maybe a little bit further, maybe closer to 3, but very shaky barricades you're shooting off of. So very good positional rifle, very challenging. You had some stuff where you're shooting prone, you were shooting offhand, pistol, same thing, some smaller targets, a lot of the pistol that I shot in the match was just close enough and just general enough. So like, let's say a BC target at 10 yards that you could shoot a little bit faster. A lot of these targets, they were quicker stages, but there was still some, I shot some, what are those, dueling trees, and it was 10, 12 yards and the plates were 3 inches or something like that. It's like a doable target, but I missed a lot on that one. It was later in the match, and you got to give them respect. If you just think you're going to blaze through like you did, that's my problem. I was shooting pistol awesome through the whole match because they had generous enough at just the right distance that you could kind of shoot fast. And then I got to that, and I just tried to shoot with that real loose sight picture that I had done for everything else. And you can't do that, you know? So I think it's a really well-rounded, if you're a well-rounded shooter, you do well. If you're a really good pistol shooter and you're not very good with rifle, you're going to have bad luck. And same thing, if you shoot rifle really well and your pistol's not great, you're going to have some stages that you're going to have some rough. So that's the thing. Ellis's long-range targets, he never gets crazy far. The matches I've shot, none of them got crazy far, and they're all, I think, reasonable targets for the kind of guns we're using. You know, is an AR-15, we've said it before, is an AR-15 capable of hitting a 6-inch plate at 700 yards? With the right shooter, the right ammo, the right, like, yeah, there are people who, someone could go out right now and do that. But practically, that's not really that gun's wheelhouse. You know, the battle rifles, the 308s, the 5.56, kind of whatever kind of rifles you want to call them, fighting rifles. BC target at 500-600 yards is like, that's kind of the practical accuracy. And as you come in, maybe you can get a little bit smaller, but you really shouldn't. And Ellis seems to keep it, I think, inside of what I'd consider a reasonable target for your average. You know, if you've got an ACOG and a 12.5, you should be able to hit all these targets if you know how to shoot your rifle. If that makes sense. Yeah,
definitely. So that sounds good. Skills wise, anything else you want to touch on there before we get into the stages?
No, I mean, like I said, if your land nav was good and your shooting was well-rounded, you know, you didn't have to win every stage, just a decent shooter, you were going to do well at this match. I mean, it was all, I think, well within the realm of like what a well-rounded competitor should be. So,
okay. So why don't you walk us through the stages then?
Yeah, so you start at the beginning, obviously. They gave you your first checkpoints. That checkpoint ended up being one of the easier ones. And the reason you were actually, when we were camping, it's right near there. There are like 2 sets of very big high tension power lines, like, you know, 6 power lines aside, and there's 2 of those. So when you plotted it and you looked on the map, it's like, oh, here's all these power lines going away from us. And then it wide off as another set of power, you know, one of those set of power lines left. And you like plot it, it's like, well, it's right near there. There's a property line that's also marked on the map that was right about, you know, it was almost at the edge of that. And with the game lands, the property lines are very, very well marked. They've got like signs on, you know, colored signs on trees, and they're every, you know, some are every 25 yards or whatever. So we're like, oh, this is a piece of cake. You know, we're going to find this. The challenge was that as you got down there, there's a little depression before you got up there. It was swamp. Like, you know, sometimes one of my partner was up to his knee at one point. You're trying to dodge around these real wet swamp, but it was just, and it had been raining off and on, you know, it was real wet that weekend. So it was just like your pants, everything was covered in water. So you kind of slogged around, like you start getting close and you're like, all right, we got to look because we know we're close. And kept going further. We're like, well, I know we haven't passed it. Well, we eventually found it. And then again, now we've got it. We got the information. Go back to your starting point. And now we got to slog through swamp again. So you slog through that. You go back to the starting point. And then they say, and I thought this was kind of neat. They had maybe a little bit of a scenario thrown in because they said, all right, the base is being attacked. You need to go defend it. So from there, they said, you know, right over there, stage 1. So you go over to stage 1 to shoot that. So stage 1 had, let me get my notes out here. There was 2 or 3 rifle targets. All right, 2 different rifle targets at 100, 125 yards. I don't know if they were quite BCs. They may have been a little bit reduced size, but about that size. And then you shot each of those 5 times. And then you had 2 different pistols, or 2 or 3 different pistol steals that you also shot 5 times. The rub was that there was an ammo box up behind you, kind of on a hill, 75 yards away. So one of your partners needed to go run that and bring it back, and you guys couldn't shoot the same targets at the same time. So basically I said, all right, I pretty quickly realized that between the two of us, my cardio was probably a little bit better than my partner's. So buzzer goes off. I run 75 yards up to grab the ammo can. He starts shooting rifle. And the plan was I grab that, I come back. If he's done with rifle and on the pistol, I just go straight to rifle. If he's struggling with rifle, I'll hit pistol, and then when we're done, we'll swap. Well, he was just finishing up. So he grounds his rifle. I pick my rifle up off the ground, start shooting that. He shoots his pistol, and then I finish with my rifle and shoot pistol. So we had a pretty good run on it. It was kind of, some teams did different things. I mean, it gave you a lot of options on how you wanted to shoot it. You know, really, you guys both could have shot and swapped, and I could have run and grabbed that and come back afterwards, you know, if you didn't want to shoot. We just thought doing two things at the same time is usually the better thing on the clock. So pretty quick stage, just depending on how you worked it out. I mean, the running was the longest part of that. So you finish with that, and they say, okay, you know, the base has been defended. Head back to your start to get, you know, your next instructions. So we went back to the start, and they said, all right, here's your next checkpoint, you know, checkpoint Bravo. So we plot that on our map. You know, we kind of see, all right, there's a road here. Being flat, for those that have done any land navigation or anything, it's flat enough. There's really not a lot of terrain association. It's not like you can say, oh, you know, I just got to take this saddle up, you know, here and shoot an azimuth between these two peaks. And there's no peaks. There's no, you know, there's not really anything. So property lines were your best bet. Roads and like paths and stuff like that. There were some lakes. So in this case, we're like, all right, well, we can see a road on this map, because our map kind of had a little area, like aerial stuff drawn in. So we see a road. We got to find this road. We go down. You know, we're like, oh, here's the pond. So we know we're on the right track. We just got to basically go till we're almost at the property line. So we did that. We ended up finding that checkpoint. And from there, the checkpoint sent us to the rally point. So they had, at the beginning, they had given us the rally point. You say, go to rally point. So we had to plot that in the map. Went and found the rally point. From the rally point, they said, all right, you're going to shoot some more stages. Go to stage 2, 3, and 4. So you head down this path, kind of follow the signs. So there's no real land nav needed for this. And we got to stage 2. There's a big pond there. You chose one rifle to shoot between your two teammates. So in this case, we chose mine, and each partner had to have their pistol on them. So to start, my partner ran to the other end of the pond. There was 4 or 5 steel targets down there, kind of smaller. He had to knock down. I ran to the middle of the pond, and I had so there's 5 knockdowns there. I had 2 targets to shoot a number of times. So they were on the smaller side. So I think they may have even been diamonds, because they were a little bit of a challenge. But I actually kind of walked forward on the pond and used a tree. So I shot each of those 5 times, I think, something like that. Once he had finished shooting that, there was a body there or something like that he had to can't remember if he drugged that. Let me see my notes here. Oh, he searched the body for intel. So he found intel that he came running over to my position, and I had grounded my rifle on the ground. He picked that rifle up, and then based off that intel, he had to shoot a certain targets a certain amount of times. So
do you mean when you say neat. The pond? I'm going to interrupt you. You said in the pond. Are you in water or around water?
We're around it. There's a pond, and like we're shooting on one side, and across 75 yards across the pond or whatever, there was targets. Okay. So, you know, if you think kind of a straight bank, this whole thing's happening on the higher part of the bank. So yeah, no water necessarily that you're going into. You're just working around it. So So yeah, that was that one. It was again, none of these stages are real long and involved. I mean, he ran 50 yards or something like that. I ran 25 yards, and both of us did some shooting. But like a lot of team matches, it pays to be comfortable with shooting other guns. You know, if you just get dialed in, all you can shoot is my pistol, my rifle. I've got everything set up exactly, and you don't practice with anything else. And then you get, you know, you pick up your partner's gun with an ACOG, or, you know, you shoot a red dot pistol and your buddy's got iron sights and you end up having to shoot each other's pistols. You can be in trouble. So these team matches, and every team match I've shot has done usually something along that lines, where you swap guns and you got to be able to be comfortable shooting other people's gear. All right, so after that, head on to stage 3. Actually, this one, again, there was a pond kind of between you and the targets. This was one of the cooler stages I've shot at a running gun. So they had a low barricade wall that had some real rough holes cut in it. And like match directors and stage designers love to do, none of the holes were at a very convenient height for you to shoot through. So you started on one side, your teammates started on the other. This is rifle only. Across the pond, again, 75, 120 yards, something, nothing crazy far, but far enough that you kind of got to do your due diligence. They had a bunch of steel targets there, but they actually had trucks, cutouts of, you know, wooden trucks. So there was one steel target was inside the window of it. There was a couple in front and back, and one of the targets, and it was the one near where my teammate was shooting, had like a blue piece of tape or something on it, which was the hostage. So you sat down, they gave you a card that said what order you need to shoot these targets in, because they want you to take out the driver first, and then the lead guy, and then the machine gunner, and then, you know, yada yada. So from your improvised position there, you had to shoot all of those targets in order. And, you know, like the one that's in the driver's seat, you're not even getting a full, you're getting the head box of a BC target or something like that. So just shooting around the truck, having a certain order, it was a really, again, it wasn't necessarily, if you were on your game, you didn't really shoot that long, but it was a very interesting presentation, you know, and the position made it really, you know, I was like, and I know better, I got in a position, I'm like, oh, this is really good. And it's time to make ready. I'm like, oh yeah, I need room for my magazine to, you know, because I had a book bag prop, and I was like, oh yeah, I need room for a magazine to fit in this gun. So that position is not going to work anymore. So, you know, me and my partner shot pretty well there. I think these first 3 stages, or these second 2, 3, and 4, I dropped one pistol shot the whole time and run rifle shot. I actually was shooting really well. It wasn't necessarily my fastest ever shooting, but I was just right when I got my sights, breaking good shots. And yeah, I was really happy with the way I shot, considering I haven't been practicing or anything like that. All right, so that's again, yeah, there's 4 targets for each shooter. We did that. Neither of us shot the hostage, so that stage went pretty well. 4 is probably, I'm going to do my best to describe this one. This was the most complicated of stages, and even after running it, I still don't know what we were doing. But you both started laying down. My partner had a grenade, so he started by standing up and throwing the grenade. I had to shoot. I had to kind of get up because there was a high grass, so you had to be almost like a kneeling or seated. I had to shoot 2 targets a number of times, multiple times, and then drop my mag. Last round in the gun is the high value. So shoot those targets multiple times, drop your magazine. You have 1 round to hit that target. So, and if you don't, then there's a penalty. So I shot that. Once I finished, that meant my partner could run forward. Or I think he held the grenade till this point. So he ran forward. He had to try to throw a grenade in something. And then he had a bunch of pistol targets to shoot. And the same thing, when he finished that, he had to drop his mag in high value. Now, if he missed that high value, he actually had to take time to put a tourniquet on himself or something like that. We didn't miss anything, so that wasn't an issue. So he shot that. Once he was able to shoot that, he started running through this like kind of not underground, but they had a tunnel built up. So he's crawling through this tunnel, and then I run forward and shoot those targets, pistol targets that he had just shot. Same thing, high value, drop mag, shoot that. And then once he got to the end of the tunnels, he had to shoot those, another set of targets a handful of times with the pistol. So I ended up shooting rifle, pistol. He ended up shooting just pistol. And again, yeah, there's penalties for the high values and, the time penalty of having to wrap yourself in a tourniquet if you miss. So again, not real long. Good teamwork. You really, once you got a shot, you need to make sure you talk to your partner, and then, he knew that he could go, and a little verbal back and forth. So all the fun stuff in a team match. Any questions, anything before we kind of go on from those stages? Okay. I'm trying to fly through them, so this isn't real long. Next we go, after 4, you head back to the rally point. So at this point, they give you 2 sets of points, Charlie and Delta. Charlie looks like the harder one. We're going to hit that first. Our plan was to go 150 meters up the road. We plotted out and figured out the pace. And then from there, turn perpendicular to the road, basically 90 degrees of the road. And it should be 100 yards or 100 meters in. So we do our pace count up 150 meters. We turn in, we kind of spread out a little bit, and we start heading into the woods. Very dense, very hard to go, so we didn't really do like a pace count from that point on. We got in deep and we're like, yeah, it should be here. We go a little bit further, still nothing. Kind of spread out and canvass that area, looking for any kind of big tree, anything that could do that. Couldn't find it, so we thought, well, maybe we, a lot of other things you could see. Not that we were on RO day, so not that there was like a lot of paths or anything like that, but like you could see someone's got to get there. So sometimes there's a little trail or something. So we came out, thought maybe we went too far, went back a little bit, tried the same thing, kind of went in and out a couple times. Weren't having any luck. So being RO day, we had actually left pretty late, at like 11 or closer to 1 o'clock, maybe, actually getting out to do our run. And, knowing what time it gets dark that time of year out there, in May, we were like, well, we've got till like 7:38 before it's dark. And we know the last 2 stages are long range. We don't want to be shooting those in the dark. So we made the decision to bail on that one for then, go get D, hit up the shooting. And if we have time, we can always try to go back and find it. So bailed out on that. We could see, all right, for D, you can take the road down here. There's another like road and property line we can follow up, and kind of took us on up along a field, the edge of a field. We kind of could see other points, on the map. So we kind of had a general idea where we were at. And this is one of those things where if you're not doing your pace count, scale on a map, if you don't do this a lot, is really, because like we were like, man, this feels too far, but we haven't hit the back property line yet. That was kind of our backstop. We knew if we hit the game trails property line, we've gone too far and we got to come up a little bit. So kept walking. Eventually I look up ahead and I'm like, hey, there's pink, So we found that. They tell us, go back to the rally point and grab a shotgun shell. So that's where we grabbed our shotgun shell. Went back to the rally point. Rally point said, hey, head down that path and follow the signs to 5 and 6. So we follow the signs back down, headed to 5 and 6. 6, I kind of talked about, or 5, kind of talked about it earlier. Since I found it and I got the team together, so I called myself the team captain. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to ballistically breach this door. They actually said, if you got a shotgun shell, you can ballistically breach it, or you can kick it in if you don't have that. Kicking it in was probably faster, but I don't come to matches to not ballistically breach doors. Like if ballistically breaching a door breaching is an option, that's the option I'm taking. So, it had like a little piece of lath or something across that. So blast that, kick it open. I safe the shotgun off this side. He goes in, shoots his rifle a bunch, on these targets. And then I don't remember how many. It's not that important. It's not much. I went in with my pistol and blasted a bunch of steel targets, like 3 steel targets 5 times each or something like that. The rifle was actually the only paper in it. And you had to have 5 hits on each piece of paper. And if you dropped any shots, if you didn't have 5 shots in each one of them, that was a failed stage. So it was important or 3, 5, whatever. I actually saw the video for the fastest team. It was like 10 seconds. And he had a D60 in, and I believe maybe a binary trigger. Whatever it was, he basically went in there and sprayed like 10 to 12 rounds on every one of the targets, and then his partner went in and just blasted away with pistol. And I mean, it was good shooting. It wasn't like they were just spraying and praying. I mean, I think the ROs were pissed because they had to tape up a ton of shots in every piece of paper. But yeah, I mean, it was funny to watch. I mean, he just blasted through the whole thing. So pretty quick stage. 6. I started, so the first shooter, which was me, started by neutralizing the 6 paddles on a dueling tree. So there was like 3 aside. It didn't matter which ones you shot. You just had to make sure one of them flipped back and forth 6 times. So shot that, kind of shot like hot garbage, considering everything up to that point had been really good. After that, I'd safe my pistol, run up, and I had to grab intel off the ground. There was, again, like a book bag or a body or something like that, dummy that you grabbed intel off of. My partner, as I was doing that, was running up the stairs, a ladder with his rifle to get to like a hunting blind. And then same thing, I had to follow him up, get behind him. Using the intel that you got, I had to guide him onto which target to shoot and how many times to shoot it. It ended up being right to left. So, I'd say like far right target 3 times. He had to neutralize that 3 times. And then number 3 target 4 times and so on. So once he did that, that stage was complete. So again, got to have good communication. Depending on who picks what, you've got to be good with rifle, good with pistol. Be able to help them if they're having trouble, hopefully spot for them. So he shot white rifle really well. It was a pretty quick stage. So after that, we came down. I think I got my checkpoints maybe a little out of order, but we came down out of that, and you go back to your rally point. From that rally point, this last checkpoint, the 5th one, wasn't the same as the rest. So everything up to this point was, here's your UTM grid location, you plot it out. In this case, they had an aerial map of this area showing, just Google image basically. And then they had a point drawn on it, and that was your last checkpoint. As Ellis said, the whole thing is like, land navigation is finding where you're at, knowing where you're at. So while UTMs and, train association and following roads, all that's important, you may also just get a picture or, in this case, the picture was this chicken shack or this, this kind of farm building that you had passed twice. You'd passed by it twice. We went down one road that was the left of it and another road that was the right of it. So if you were paying attention to your surroundings, like when we looked at that, we're like, oh crap, we know exactly where that's at. So, we made a beeline to that. We were excited because, again, light was getting dim, and we were really worried if that last checkpoint was like another really hard one like C was, that we were going to have trouble finding it. So we head there, get that checkpoint. It tells us, hey, go to your last stages, go to stage 7 and 8. We had been working stage 7 earlier in the day, so we were pretty familiar with where to go. So we shot straight towards that. 7, you're able to start in any position. Guns empty. On the beep, the rifle, both people would load their rifle. Shooter 1 had what they called headshots. So basically they had, I think, 8-inch targets. You know, think of like a dueling, not a dueling tree, but like a plate rack, but 8-inch targets, hanging targets, 3 of them. And then the other shooter had a torso and, you know, off in front of him. So he had to shoot. So I had to shoot, shooter 1 had to shoot 1 headshot. So I had to shoot the 8-inch plate once. Then my partner, once I shot that and he knew it, you know, it was a hit, he had to put 3 hits on the torso. And I think these targets were, did I write that down? 250 yards. They were inside of 300. 250, something like that. So I'd shoot them, one of them. He'd have to shoot his 3 times. I have to shoot mine. He have to shoot his 3 times. So not real bad. One of the kind of cheats to that stage, I guess, is they said you could start in any position. So we started proned out in the ground, you know, bags, like things ready to, you know, mag. I had my mag in hand. You couldn't start with it in the gun, but like my mag is like next to the mag well. You know, they're giving me a minch. I'm gonna, so, and I ordered it. That's what I let people do. They couldn't start. You couldn't have it sitting in the mag well ready to seat, but it was right there, click, and you could start shooting. It's pay attention to stage brief, people. I saw a lot of people standing up. They don't even know, you know, mags aren't even anywhere close to where they can get it. They're standing up and then beep, and it's like, oh, where's my mag? Oh, now I got to get prone. You know, they hadn't like got prone to see if they could even see what they needed to see. It's like, you know, if they don't tell you something, ask, you know. So I can start anywhere. You know, what's the start position? Just wherever you want. So I can start prone, you know. Ask questions. There's a lot of times the match director has put that in to see who's paying attention and who's, you know, who's not. Give yourself as much advantage as you can. All right, so after that, you finish that stage. They had a big sandbag, a big duffel bag with like 75 pounds and sand in it. You had to resupply, and this is another one of those, I kind of forgot to mention it, but there's a lot of like scenario in it. So they said, all right, well, you need to supply the next checkpoint. So, you know, my partner's like, well, I'll take it. So he tossed it on his back. We drug it to stage 8. You know, we had to set it down. And this was a bounding fire stage. So I think he started off about 300 yards or something like that. First shooter ran up to a barricade. As soon as I started shooting, he could peel off and go to his barricade. So they kind of made, you know, the first one position was in the middle. And then from that, you had 3 more positions on each side going up. So 7 positions in total. So I start shooting my target from there. He ran off to his. As soon as I got everything neutralized, and you shot each target like 3 times or something like that. This is, again, communication. You know, shoot, or your turn, or whatever, you know, however you guys want to communicate. So he'd start shooting. As soon as he started engaging targets, I ran to the next one. And same thing, you just bounding fire your way up till my last position was, you know, 275, 250 from the target. Really fun stage. That was the only one we had a DNF on. They, it just, neither of us shot particularly well. The barricades it was just like a pallet, and they just drove a fence post in the ground, but not even that far. I'm sure intentionally. So they weren't real wobbly. I was at the last position when we timed out, and there was actually like really tall grass in the way. So you had to like get on your elbows on the barricade to see it. I mean, some people said they were shooting through the grass, like they kind of knew where, you know, they'd get up and see where it was at, and then you'd have to shoot through grass. So I know that was intentional. The last position was a very challenging position to see one of the targets, and it was fun. I mean, that's stages like that are good. You gotta time out every once in a while and take your licking. So that was the last stage. From there, it was you had to take the duffel bag back to the stage before 7 because you passed by it, and then head back to the start finish line. So no more land nav, nothing special. Just run back. My partner was not in running condition at that point. I kind of had him jogging telephone pole to telephone pole and then walking. So that's where we finished up. So fun, really fun match.
Yeah, it sounds like a good match. So any lessons learned, takeaways, things that you would work on different, things you'd practice? What are you thinking there?
Yes. Yeah, so land nav. Charlie, the one that we missed, the only land nav we missed. I don't want to say the move for that was because you knew where you're at the rally point and you plotted that out, was to just dead reckon. So I think some people found it other ways. Most of the team successful basically shot, figured out the angle from that spot to there, shot an azimuth, and then just, separated a little and just followed that azimuth to the point. If you did that, it was at like 100, like I said, 250 yards or something like that. That was, in retrospect, that would have been the better move for that, instead of where we tried to do pace count and azimuth, but we did pace count, but we tried to do it in two legs, basically make a triangle out of it. Whereas just walking straight there was probably the better move. So knowing when to do that is and the better move, when to dead reckon, when not to, is a skill that needs practice. Being confident in your pace count, being confident in shooting an azimuth, and doing dead reckoning is a skill that I need to practice. All land nav, because I'm not that comfortable. It's not like I'm a pro at any of it, but that's definitely one I'm adding to my list. Shooting wise, this match I felt like I shot well. My partner shot pretty well. We could have been a little bit faster, but it is what it is. We met that weekend. Like, someone found me the partner because my first partner got injured and couldn't make it. So, for never talking, we communicated well enough. I mean, both of us could have communicated better, but that is what it is, But shooting wise, I didn't think there was any big takeaways. If you're a competent shooter, you'll probably do pretty well at Ellis's match.
Okay, so sounds good. I mean, the shooting sounds really fun. I don't have a lot of experience with the land nav, so that'd probably be a struggle for me. But yeah, shooting seems straightforward. Sounds like you guys had it figured out. So my partner helped a good deal with land nav. Like I said, he had only read it up on it. He had never done pace count. He had never done so. It really, Ellis joked that the only, people were complaining about C a little bit. And I wouldn't complain about it. He said, but that's the only real land nav point in the whole thing. Like, all the other points, you had pretty good terrain, property lines, roads, things like that. That was the only real land nav in it. So I don't know what he'll do next year. I guess the year before it was even harder, so he scaled it back. He took some points off. As someone not real comfortable, I thought it was a good balance of getting people through a course without being out there for 8 hours. I mean, I think the average time was 3-4 hours, something like that. I think the year before it was like 5 or 6. So I think if you practiced a little bit of land nav, knew how to plot points and read a compass, maybe you're not going to get every last one, but you're going to get most of them. I think you're going to have a good time. Like, I think it's very doable to someone trying to learn those skills and get better at it. If you don't have to you didn't have to pass Ranger School selection, land nav to be able to do this, which is good, because a lot of what the gun run and these running guns do is teaching people these skills. Some of them are martial skills, some of them are, more practical. Are you always going to have your phone on you to use Google Maps? Like, no, being able to read a map, especially out in the wilderness, is a good skill. Yeah, I mean, solar flare is going to take out all GPS anyways. So, I mean, we just got to factor that in. So, all right, so that sounds good. Do you have any final thoughts? Any things you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I would say if you get a chance to do this land nav match or any of the gun run matches, do it. I know Ellis's shooting is fair. You know, I tend to be a more how I say this. Like if I shoot a match, I'm not DNFing that much. You know, my skills are to the point where like I'm not going to be necessarily be the fastest guy on there. I can put some top 5, top 10 times up there. So I'm not a top shooter, but I'm not like, you know, I'm upper middle pack, I guess. So if you're a newer shooter, some of these stages were challenging for people. Like there was some difficult shots, but everything was doable. And if you're struggling on it, I would say just figure out what it was, and that's where you need to practice. But these matches are well within everybody's capabilities if you put a little work into it. So get out, do a gun run, do Legion's coming up. That's already sold out. But if you can get into a match like that, do Legion. Just find a match and sign up and do it, because you will learn something. And if it's a team match, even better. So that would be my final thoughts. And
you're upper middle pack now. You're leaving the rest of us mid packers behind. You know, this is
if it was a major 3-gun match, I would probably be like solid mid pack. For a run and gun, yeah, I mean, I'd like to think of myself as like a solid upper middle shooter.
I feel like this is just like a Primer and Co. new merch that you're working on.
Yeah,
you got sick of selling the mid pack stuff, so now it's all upper mid pack.
Well, you gotta rebrand. So 3 Guns dead. We gotta rebrand.
Long live 3 Gun.
Someone,
right?
if anyone stayed this long, they're gonna get pissed. 3 Guns not dead, you guys. Just go shoot 3 gun matches. Just don't bitch about the prize table.
Right. So it sounds like a good match. I'd like to get out to it, but it's way far away from me now. So we'll see what we can do.
It was an 8-hour drive that I did like solo both ways. So it's fun, but I like not driving 8 hours for matches. I'll put it that way. If I could drive less than 8, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
So thanks for being on here, Mark. I know we're going to see you here before too long. Are you Legion, right? Did you get into Legion?
No, Zombie for sure.
Zombie for sure.
Yep.
And then we'll get you out to Guardian.
A Heartbreak is
too
the
late.
next goal.
No, Guardians next month.
I'm not going to get to Guardian.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
We'll see.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking around, you guys. Sorry for the interruption. We're going to try to piece these 2 pieces together, and then we'll get this out. So thanks again, Mark.
Yep.
All right.